Hello and welcome to another edition of the Schmozcast. We're actually trying to do a simulcast on a video stream. We'll hopefully have that up by the end of the day. We'll see how things go with that. But you just heard Paige's theme song. There's a reason for that. She is unfortunately going to have to call it a career. We've heard this before from other wrestlers who did not end up retiring at that specific time. But right now, there's a major neck injury for Paige, and it seems to be along the lines of what Edge went through. I'm here with Chandler and Andre in the studio at 103.5 The Sun, WLSPLP, Sun Prairie, Wisconsin. When it's all said and done, suppose this is the end of Paige's career. What is she going to be most known for?
I would hope her in-ring ability and skill, because she's one of the best to do it, male or female. But unfortunately, I think that things that happened outside the ring recently with her that's gonna follow her more, especially right now with that still being pretty fresh in people's minds.
Just for the record, she's done in WWE. They're not clearing her, but that doesn't necessarily mean she won't ever wrestle again.
It could be very much similar to the Daniel Bryan situation, where maybe in WWE his in-ring career is over. But we're gonna talk a little bit more about that today as well, and what we think some eggs have been dropped recently, or a storyline that seems to be going in the direction of Daniel Bryan wrestling again. But suppose this is the end of Paige's career, especially with WWE. You know, she certainly has a few shining moments. She won the WWE Championship on her first match, her first night, the night after WrestleMania. She took it from AJ, who at that time was the longest running champion, if I'm not mistaken, which they would, of course, eclipsed her with Nikki Bella, I believe, probably because of the CM Punk stuff. But what are some of the other Paige highlights for her career? She's been on Tough Enough. She was an NXT champion. She was maybe the youngest WWE women's. It was the Divas champion at the time. But she's got quite a list of accolades. But ultimately, I'm guessing, is she going to be remembered for the last year and a half, which has kind of been just chaos? Is she the Amy Winehouse of WWE, where extremely talented, like on a totally other level, but just a lot of the chaos surrounding her is also a big part of the story?
No, not at all. I don't mean any disrespect to Amy Winehouse, but I don't think Paige is at that kind of place in her life. Most of her issues stemmed from something that was not in her control, something that I don't really want to get into it, but it's not fair to her that she's getting this criticism, and it really bothers me that fans, especially the internet fans, are really getting on her about things that she hasn't done anything wrong, in my opinion, other than maybe the wellness violation. Okay, but that's not what people are talking about, and it's unfair to her. I'm just hoping in time that eventually people will think about her and thinking about her in-ring career, about her debut defeating AJ Lee for the Divas Championship in her first night. That's one of the things I remember most. That was one of my favorite debuts in WWE, and a really great Raw moment that I actually went and rewatched the other day because they have it on the WWE Network. And yeah, it was a great moment, and I'm hoping that that's one of the things that she's going to be remembered for. It's unfortunate because she's only 25. She should just be entering the prime of her career, and now she's going to be done, at least as far as WWE is concerned. I'm really holding out hope that she's going to be able to make a comeback, but at the same time, you got to be careful with an injury like that, especially involving your neck. I saw a video of the injury a couple times, and it doesn't look, her reaction to it was kind of scary, the way that she was not in control of herself and she couldn't stand, she was stumbling, and it just, whenever you're dealing with a neck and stuff like that, it's really scary. So it's unfortunate. I'm really upset about it. I was looking forward to seeing this half of her career because I am a huge Paige fan, and I was really glad to see her come back and put some of the drama behind her, and was really looking forward to see what she was going to do. So it's kind of like a punch in the gut for me as a fan. I can't even begin to imagine how she's feeling. We'll see how this plays out. Her parents, I think they have a wrestling promotion somewhere in the UK. I could be completely wrong.
No, you're right about that.
But so there's always a possibility that she can wrestle again. It just won't be on WWE TV, sadly.
What do you guys think is next for her? I wouldn't mind seeing her as a commentator It seems it's few and far between, really, that you get any female commentators. But Renee Young was awesome in NXT. We talked a little bit about this earlier today. I could totally see her in that role, or as one of the trainers, like Sarah Del Rey. Is that her?
I think so. Yeah.
That was her in-ring name, at least. I can't think of what her actual name is. I could see her in a role like that. I think that at 25, that it's hard to really say. Who knows? In a couple years, or maybe even sooner, we could see her in the ring again. And if she wants to wrestle, trust me, there's enough independent places. There's tons of, like, the door is not closed on her. If she wants to wrestle, it ultimately will be her decision. But WWE might stop her from wrestling within their company. She could do the same thing as Daniel Bryan. Wait out the contract. Wait till she gets an opportunity somewhere else. And to me, it's unlikely that she won't be wrestling again in some way. But at least to work out the rest of her contract, I imagine she'll be doing something else within WWE. She can still be the lead of this faction, Absolution, which works fine. She wasn't really wrestling that much right now anyway. I think it's good that she did come back for at least a month to 6 weeks, as opposed to everyone, this injury happening somewhere else or not coming back to WWE and wrestling. I think that would have been worse for her legacy to not at least have had this last 6 weeks. But there's going to be plenty of opportunities for Paige, I think, in other facets. We'll see how things go. But back to the Daniel Bryan thing, he's in the biggest part of the biggest storyline of SmackDown, and it very much seems to me that Daniel Bryan is going to be having a match at WrestleMania, and to me it looks like it's going to be against Shane McMahon, maybe for the control of SmackDown, or something along those lines would be some sort of stipulation. Or maybe it's one of those where they each have a wrestler representing them, but it would seem weird just because Shane McMahon has wrestled at 2 straight WrestleManias and a SummerSlam thrown in there as well. Or, no, SummerSlam he was a special guest referee. Hell in a Cell, he would have been in the match against Kevin Owens. You guys see, give me a percentage. Daniel Bryan wrestles at WrestleMania this year. What are you going to put it at?
Man, I would say there's at least like 75 to 90% chance. I mean, I don't know. So
it's more likely than not.
I think so. Just because everything that's been happening lately, the way that Daniel Bryan has been booking the matches that he's booked, especially the stuff for the Royal Rumble coming up with the WWE Championship match being a handicap match for the title, and then also what he did with the tag titles, it's definitely, it seems like he's kind of throwing his weight around, which the entire time that he's been the general manager, it hasn't really felt this way so much. Like, yes, he did book matches, and yes, he did, come out and make certain decisions and make certain calls, but he didn't do it in the way that he's doing it now. And now it feels like he's doing it just to get under Shane McMahon's skin. And it kind of feels like they're both doing things to get under each other's skin. And I'm, obviously that's the storyline. That's what's going on with that. But it just so much more seems that way now, especially with, just like I said, the way that he's making the matches, like, it's kind of seem one-sided or unfair.
It would be, well, let's get your percentage there, Andre.
40%, I think. I think he wants to, and I think he's still trying to get clearance to wrestle. And I'll say this because these words came from Daniel Bryan's mouth himself, so I'm pretty confident in saying this. If he doesn't wrestle at WrestleMania, he won't wrestle in WWE. But I'm almost positive he's going to wrestle somewhere because he did turn down a big contract extension from WWE, allegedly, according to the dirt sheets, for main event money for a guy that isn't even going to be wrestling. So, yeah, I say 40% because I still think WWE is going to be very cautious because it does involve concussions, and they are in the middle of a concussion lawsuit. And yes, they're doing a lot with Daniel Bryan, but they also did the Daniel Bryan Miz stuff, and that never went anywhere. So 40%. I would have a couple weeks ago I would have said 25%, but the way that they've been booking Daniel Bryan and Shane lately, really interesting. There's got to be a reason behind it.
40%, but it's trending upwards.
Yeah, and we'll see what happens the next few weeks. I want to see it. Oh man, he's one of my favorites, one of my top favorite wrestlers of all time. I would. I'm just getting excited thinking about it, and I don't want to get my hopes up. That's another reason why I say 40%, because I don't want to get excited and then not have it happen and be disappointed. But if it doesn't happen, I don't think I can be disappointed because I got my hopes up. I think I'd be disappointed in WWE for booking him so prominently in the biggest storyline on SmackDown. So something's got to happen. There's got to be a payoff, and it's got to be worth it. He's got to get in the ring to either wrestle or get physical or something. But having someone wrestle as his proxy or have him being in the corner of another superstar, it's not the payoff for the way that they're booking him and the way that they're portraying him. Not even a heel turn for Daniel Bryan is going to be enough of a payoff. He has to get physical somehow, for me at least, unless he physically can't.
The difference between this and the Miz situation from talking smack about 13, 14 months ago is that was unplanned. That was just Daniel Bryan dropped the coward line on the Miz, and the Miz kind of went off, and it built something, and the Miz really took it and ran, not just in that very segment, but then also taking on Daniel Bryan's yes kicks and the yes chants and doing things that Daniel Bryan would formerly do but no longer is allowed to in WWE. Whereas this is the main number one storyline going back till at least October during Hell in the Cell. This is the main storyline of SmackDown, your number 2 show, but if in the fans' eyes, it's the better wrestling show, it's the better program, it's the better product, it's the better pretty much everything. It hasn't gotten stale like Raw has in many different cases. This is the number one thing. What a miss this would be for WWE to not get this. I mean, to me, this has to be Daniel Bryan in some form or fashion at WrestleMania. I don't know why WWE would like play with their fans in that way. Like sometimes you do it to get heat or get a guy over, or a swerve is coming here or there. It would be devastating to the fan base to do this and then to not have Daniel Bryan wrestle. And Daniel Bryan has some of the tests that he's taken for his concussion are tests that no one else has taken, like whether it be football players. Like he's taking some tests. He's on a different level, I guess, in terms of concussion tests that are going on. He's been cleared by NFL doctors. I think the Arizona Cardinals doctors cleared him. I know that doesn't say that much, but at the same time, a lot of people, not that this is right, but a lot of people are probably wrestling or playing sports with much worse and haven't taken the year and a half off, at least. What has it been, 2+ years now since we've seen Daniel Bryan? And there is a lot of people close to the situation make it seem like it is very likely that Daniel Bryan will be back at some point.
To be fair, as you said, an NFL doctors are not necessarily. They're the people that let Cam Newton stumble, collapse on the field, get up wobbly, and come back in. And another thing, and I'm not trying to be the Debbie Downer, I just want to bring some, be the devil's advocate and bring some realism into this. He was also having seizures at one point from the concussions. So he's gonna have to be cleared. He's got to be cleared by WWE doctor, and that's gonna be the tough part because they are in the middle of a lawsuit, and I mean they're gonna have to really feel that Daniel Bryan is safe and that he's not going to, because they're going to be liable, and that could be used in the lawsuit that's currently ongoing against them if they were to let Daniel Bryan wrestle again and he were to get another concussion. That would really hurt their cause. So I think WWE is going to tread really lightly. Yeah, that's tough. It's really tough.
Last week we talked about what would save a TNA type of organization. September, I believe, is when Daniel Bryan's contract is up. Where are we going to see him? It's going to happen.
Well, from something that he recently retweeted from Ring of Honor, it was Daniel Bryan versus AJ Styles, and he mentioned that he would like to get back in the ring with AJ Styles once again, and he also mentioned that his crossface chicken wing was better than Marty Scurll's. But I think that if he's not gonna be, and also Marty retweeted him, are you all in? He said, would you be all in? Something to that effect. Just because the Bullet Club, Young Bucks are putting together their own live event special. But I think that if Daniel Bryan is not going to be cleared to wrestle in WWE once his contract is up, and he's not going to re-sign his contract. He already turned down an extension, and I think that Ring of Honor would be the place for him to be.
I agree. And for the record, if there's a villain versus Bryan Danielson match, you guys might have to be prepared to perform CPR on me, because I might pass out and die from ecstasy, because those are two of my favorite wrestlers in the world of all time. So I think that would be great. I think seeing him against Omega, against Cody Rhodes, against all those guys would be incredible. And I definitely think like Ring of Honor, New Japan is probably what he'd do. But he could also do the Austin Aries thing and kind of be wherever, whenever, kind of do what he wants kind of thing. And yeah, that would be cool. Either way, he's going to wrestle. I know he's going to wrestle at some point. Hopefully it's at WrestleMania, but if not, the other options are just as good, if not better. I think a Marty Scurll, Kenny Omega, Cody Rhodes is probably, no offense to Shane McMahon, but probably better match options for Bryan Danielson than a Shane McMahon.
I will take, and I overlooked Shane last year as really just like a spot monkey in a lot of ways.
Well, he's more than that, but
and he is, and the match with AJ Styles, but AJ Styles could have a pretty good match with probably, I don't know, a Ryback or someone that I don't think is very talented. But I'd probably list off 100 current wrestlers, as many as I could before I got to Shane McMahon as somebody I want him to see. However, now with the buildup of the story, give me Daniel Bryan in a ring whatsoever.
Oh, of course.
You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't matter. To that effect, it doesn't matter. And I just want to see it happen. And I'm not trying to throw shade at Shane, but he's not a professional wrestler. And I would love to see if I'm getting Daniel Bryan at WrestleMania or Daniel Bryan at all, I'm gonna just accept it and be welcoming of that. But there's a lot of other people. Kenny Omega to me would be the ultimate. I don't think anything right now would be better than Daniel Bryan, the best wrestler of the last 5 to 7 years, with the best wrestler of the last 2. And AJ Styles, of course, is in many people's lists got to be right there or above Omega. I think they're really just fighting for alternating between the top spot over the last 1,000 days, if you will, I guess, or even longer for AJ Styles. But yeah, Daniel Bryan and Kenny Omega would be that's about as good as it could possibly get for me as a dream opponent. That's a possibility right now with both guys in their mid-30s. I think that I don't know. I can't name an opponent that would be better for me that I would be all in on seeing. Do you guys have somebody that you want to see? I know Marty Scurll would be a big one for you, but someone else that you'd like to see, someone who's not in WWE right now.
That I would like to see Daniel Bryan go up against?
Yes.
I mean, Kenny Omega would definitely be at the top of the list for me, I think. Okada would be great as well.
Yep.
Ibushi.
Oh, Ibushi, sure.
Yeah, that would be fantastic. Yeah.
They could do the kiss thing.
I don't know about that.
I'd like to see it. Maybe slip him the tongue, I'm not sure.
Wow. Oh, Fernie, I got a question for you because I want to disprove something that you said earlier.
Oh, Christ.
When Shane McMahon got into the ring at Hell in a Cell, or got into the cell at Hell in a Cell, got into the cell at WrestleMania, when he stepped into the ring against Kurt Angle at King of the Ring, was he not paid for those shows or something? Or I'm a little curious as to why you said he's not a professional wrestler.
He's not a professional wrestler.
So he did that for free? What a good man.
It was.
I mean, he loves his dad, I guess.
But it was probably included in his already extremely large salary or whatever. I'm guessing he doesn't make an hourly rate, but I don't know if Shane McMahon gets involved.
He's a professional wrestler.
Shane McMahon is not a professional wrestler.
Yes, he is. What was he doing at Hell in a Cell? Was he talking or was he wrestling? And was he doing it on a big stage and getting paid for it?
When Tony Romo warmed up with the Mavericks, was he a professional basketball player?
No, but was he on the court during the game?
I don't know.
If he stepped on the court during the game, he would be a professional basketball player.
Okay, well, there's this lady. I don't know. I forgot her name. I want to say Rising Sun, but that's not what it is. But the lady who is on a unicycle and throws up plates and stuff like that.
Does she do it during the game when the game is going on?
It's halftime of the game.
Well, she's not on the court. Basketball.
She's on the court. She's not a professional basketball
player.
No,
but
she's
the Red Panda is the Red Panda.
She's a professional.
What did I say? Rising Sun?
Rising Sun. No, it's the Red Panda.
Yeah, I was close.
She's awesome, though.
Yeah, she is awesome.
But if she put on a jersey, played 3 seconds of an NBA game, she would have been a professional basketball player.
Oh my God.
And Shane has done a lot more than 3 seconds of a professional wrestling match. So he's a professional wrestler.
I will disagree that Shane McMahon is a professional wrestler. Chandler, go ahead, weigh in. Even if I don't, just go ahead. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong.
I don't think he's around. I wouldn't consider him being around enough to say that he is a professional wrestler.
So
I mean,
Brock
I guess
Lesnar's
maybe,
not a professional wrestler.
So who?
Brock Lesnar's not a professional wrestler.
Brock Lesnar wrestles a lot more than Shane McMahon does. Shane McMahon wrestles maybe 3 times a year at least, or at the most. Brock is
minimum
there.
3 times.
Yes, Brock is there
How
for
many
at least the
times does
big
he
4
wrestle,
pay-per-views.
though? So 4
for
times
at least the big 4 pay-per-views, and sometimes you'll catch him at another random pay-per-view here or there. I definitely would say that Brock Lesnar is more. I mean, I don't disagree with the fact that he's not there enough, especially being the Universal Champion, being the champion of the flagship show, holding that title. I definitely would say that he needs to be around more than he is for that. But I would say that I would consider him a professional wrestler over Shane McMahon at this point.
So even though Shane McMahon and Brock wrestle about the same amount of matches a year, and Shane McMahon is on TV more than Brock Lesnar is, Brock's a professional wrestler and Shane isn't.
Brock is holding a title, and
Shane was a European champion.
But currently, we're talking right now, and when Shane is on TV, 9 times out of 10, he is being the commissioner of SmackDown. Brock Lesnar is on TV. He may not be wrestling as often when he shows up on Monday Night Raw, but he still has the strap over his shoulder. And he's in the ring as the champion.
Shane McMahon is a character.
So John Cena is not a professional wrestler anymore.
Who is?
John Cena. How many times has he wrestled in 2017?
He is a professional wrestler. John Cena's a pro wrestler.
At this point in time, Shane McMahon is looked at as the commissioner who has matches, who can wrestle. But the names that you're naming, they're still, when they come out, they're still coming out as in-ring performers. I don't see Shane McMahon coming out as an in-ring performer. He comes out as the commissioner, but he can perform in the ring.
Okay, so he's a current employee and a former professional wrestler.
No, I don't. He's not a former professional wrestler. He's had matches. He's had matches.
You're getting over like a lead balloon over here.
Yeah,
man.
and okay, all right. Floyd Mayweather and Mike Tyson are not professional wrestlers. Mike Tyson's a different story because he wasn't actually in a match. I guess he was a enforcer, a referee. But Floyd Mayweather, yeah, he was in a match at a pay-per-view, but he is not a professional wrestler.
Yeah, one match. He didn't do what Shane did. He didn't take crazy bumps like Shane did. He didn't jump off a freaking Titantron.
And Shane didn't do it for 8 years because he's not a professional wrestler. He was in China or Japan working out their Netflix style streaming service of some sort.
He's a former professional wrestler. He used to be a professional wrestler back when he was winning European championships and involved in storylines with some of the top performers. He's wrestled with Shawn Michaels, Stone Cold. I mean, look at the people he's been in the ring with.
I'm not taking any of that away from him. Even back then when he was holding a title, would you have considered Stephanie McMahon when she was with Triple H? Would you have considered her a professional wrestler when she had the women's championship?
Yeah, during that point when they were running everything and she was
even though she wrestled less than Brock Lesnar does right now, and you said Brock Lesnar isn't a professional wrestler?
No, Brock Lesnar is a professional wrestler. I was using that as an example of why Shane is, because...
Okay. I see what you're saying. Okay,
we will agree to disagree.
I think that's the best we're gonna get here.
No, okay. Let's
let me ask you this: if Shane McMahon gets inducted into the Hall of Fame, is he going in the celebrity wing or is he going in as a wrestler?
He'd go in the same way that like a Jim Cornette would get in, and it's not from being a wrestler. Here, okay. Question: What is Shane McMahon's main source of income?
I don't know. I don't know this kind of information. Why does it matter?
Okay, how much money has Shane McMahon made wrestling?
I don't know.
We can't guarantee that he's made any money.
He got paid to wrestle. Come on now.
Give me a dollar amount.
That's what is it that Bruce Pritchard says? That's personal information. That's private. That's not fair to relinquish that stuff. So I wouldn't know, but I guarantee you he did not get paid to wrestle. But I digress. He's a professional wrestler. In my mind, he's a professional wrestler. When he gets inducted into the Hall of Fame, he's going to be for everything he's done, which includes the wrestling. It's not going to be like a Pete Rose type of thing.
How about it? All right, fine. We'll move on for now. But if one of our listeners wants to chime in on whether or not Shane McMahon is a professional wrestler, or if they want to tweet us, whatever, call the show 608-825-0930 or
Find us at the Schmozcast on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter.
That's right. We have an Instagram. I just found this out a couple weeks ago. So
Get with the times.
that's right. You know what? My other show has a Instagram that is being run by somebody else, but they're posting as me, and I don't have control over it. It's driving me mad. He's got access to my friends on Facebook. It's like all bad stuff. People I don't talk to, girls I don't need to be getting Instagram. I mean, oh man, it's a crap show. After this week, I think we have all seen most of New Japan Pro Wrestling's Wrestle Kingdom 12. This is their version of WrestleMania, and it really has become the best wrestling event these last few years. I think Wrestle Kingdom, beginning to finish, the in-ring matches, everything is better about Wrestle Kingdom than WrestleMania outside of a few moments, more so than great matches. But we've now pretty much all seen it. Let's go into Jericho Okada. This had maybe the biggest build of any match since at least WrestleMania. And in terms of New Japan, I think that this match had maybe the most hype ever. And if you want to go back to a year ago, Omega Okada, amazing match in that first one at Wrestle Kingdom 11. Then there was a lot of pressure on them for 5 months later when we would see them tie up again in May. There was a lot of hype going into that one because of the first one, and they exceeded that. So now, and then they, of course, would fight each other again, I believe, in July or August. So they put on 3 great matches. Omega's now a part of this one. So in in less than 370 days, Kenny Omega has been a part of 4 of maybe the most important matches of this millennium for wrestling. What do you guys think about Okada and Jericho?
It was fantastic. It got 5 stars from Meltzer, and I couldn't agree more with it. It's amazing what Chris Jericho is able to do time and again, especially as old as he is now. He's 47 years old. He's able to reinvent himself over and over again, and I feel that this time the reinvention, what he's doing right now, it's the most important. It's the biggest scale, and like I said, at this point in his, not just in his career, but in his life, not only is he 47 years old, but he's also the front man, the lead singer of the band Fozzy, who, if I'm not mistaken, is currently touring. Or they were just recently. Either way, he tours with a rock band that sells out venues all over the world. He's a professional wrestler. He wrestles in the WWE. He had the great year that he did in 2017.
One of the best podcasts, probably.
One of the best podcasts.
Just podcasts, period. But in terms of wrestling podcasts, I think you'd slot him in number 2 behind Something to Wrestle with Bruce Pritchard and Conrad Thompson. I don't know if I imagine
probably about around there.
But Jericho's stories. Who is like as multifaceted as he is? If he wanted to be, he's written a couple of great books too. He was. So when I was first watching Omega and Jericho at Ben Wong's contributor to the show a couple weeks ago or last week. It was later in the day, it was on at 1 in the morning till 6 in the morning or something like that, between the 10 or 11 matches that are on the card. I was watching it later that day, and we had another friend there with us, and the way I thought of it is Kenny Omega is sort of what Jericho was in 1997, 1998.
When he debuted in WWE at that point?
No, that would have been leading up to his WCW, I guess, in some ways. Just because, he only wrestled 30 matches in ECW, but Kenny Omega certainly is on a bigger scale and a bigger stage right now. But just in terms of being the internet fans' darling, the Smarks' favorite wrestler, the guy who had wrestled in all these different places but hadn't yet quite made it huge in the States yet. And Kenny Omega is still a big deal in the United States, but it wasn't until maybe July that he had a huge match in the States for New Japan. I know that Ring of Honor does crossovers, and you can see him on Ring of Honor quite a bit because of the Bullet Club being a part of.
But you don't see Kenny on Ring of Honor nearly as much as you see the Bucks or Marty Scurll or Cody Rhodes. He's a lot more. He's in New Japan a lot more.
Yeah, no, and I just think that Kenny Omega is a bigger deal now than Jericho was then, certainly. But I kind of just put that comparison in my head just because, Jericho went to Japan. He was Smoky Mountain, Japan, Mexico, Canada. I mean, there's all sorts of stuff that he did, and he was like, if you were a wrestling magazine reader before the internet really blew up, or even when the early days of the internet and message boards and stuff like that, like Jericho was the guy, you know what I mean? Like he was the man. And how over was he in ECW? And he was only there for maybe a handful of months and wrestled less than 30 matches.
Jericho, for his last 6 months or so in WCW, he was booked so poorly. He was losing to people he shouldn't have been losing to. He lost to his bodyguard, Ralphus. Then, despite all that, despite the piss poor booking and the way he left WCW, he debuted on Raw against The Rock to a massive pop, which tells me exactly what you said. He was the Kenny Omega of back then. As far as if there was Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, if there was social media back then, they'd be talking about him. Before he jumped to when he was in WCW, before he jumped to WWF, they'd be talking about him the way they're talking about Omega. That match was definitely 5 stars for me as well. Kenny Omega, it may be self-proclaimed. He proclaimed himself the god of professional wrestling today, but that's 100% true. In my mind, he is the god of pro wrestling today. And not only that, Chris Jericho, and this may be another point of contention. I know at least Chandler's with me on this because we've had conversations, but I consider Chris Jericho now with what he did against Omega and what he's probably going to do in a few more matches here in New Japan. He's top 5 all-time professional wrestler in my mind. And the match that him and Omega put on at 47 years old, I mean, we expect greatness from Kenny Omega because that's what he does. But Jericho just continues to amaze me. Going from the best friend angle with KO, touring with Fozzy, now doing this. This man reinvents himself every time, and it's just a pleasure to watch. Chris Jericho is quickly becoming one of my all-time favorites. He's the man.
I can't gush enough about Chris Jericho and how awesome he is. I despised him as a kid, but that segment with The Rock was when he first debuted was one of the best things I'd ever seen. It was right before SmackDown was about to, maybe right around that time that SmackDown first debuted, and it was such an electric segment, him, The Rock, and Jericho. WWE really dropped the ball. They continued to go with The Rock versus Billy Gunn at that SummerSlam, which was just horrible. I don't think Jericho even wrestled at that SummerSlam. Jericho and Rock would have been the way to go. Within a few months, Jericho was battling for the IC title with Chyna, Bob Holly, sort of taking over the role that Jeff Jarrett had sort of just vacated to go back to WCW again. And so they dropped the ball on him for a while. They really should have rode the Rock versus Jericho thing for a while. They would eventually get back to it. He would beat The Rock and Stone Cold to be the first ever.
In the same night.
In the same night, yeah. And it would be the first ever, I guess, unified big gold belt and Winged Eagle undisputed champion. He's Jericho. There's so many good things you can say about him. His segments, he changes with the times. His matches don't get bad. Even as he is less athletic than he was, certainly 10, maybe 5 years ago, he still puts on these great matches. In 2017, think about this. He wrestled for the first 4 months, really, and then came back to do some of the build up for against Omega. And he was he's going to be in the conversation for our best wrestler of 2017, or he's in the conversation at age 47. And for the first 4 months of 2017, he gave us maybe the best segments that we had gotten the entire year. And, of course, the match didn't really deliver quite the way him and KO wanted to at Mania in the opening match.
Well, Jericho really enjoyed that match. He talks about that as one of his 5 favorite matches when he had that article before the Kenny Omega match. That was one of his favorites. So, I mean, KO may not have liked it too much, and neither did Vince, but Jericho really enjoyed his match.
How did you guys feel about it? I expected so much more. I don't think that going on first was maybe the way to go. I don't know if that's what hurt them and it got clipped for time or whatever, but it just didn't have the pizzazz, I guess, that I was hoping for.
I'm in the same boat there. I definitely wanted more out of the match. Not that it was a bad match, but I definitely felt like not only from the build-up, but considering the two competitors, KO and Chris Jericho, I expected a little bit more out of the match, and I feel that they both felt that same way as well.
I definitely wanted more out of the match. I'm not disagreeing with that. I'm just was pointing out that Jericho did enjoy the match. But as far as that match goes, I think the build up for that match, the way that the Omega match, way that the KO Kenny Omega and Chris Jericho match went should have been.
They're the same guy.
Oh my! The build up for that Kevin Owens, Chris Jericho, and the match that Kenny Owens and Chris Jericho had. Kevin Owens. Damn, now I'm all confused. That fit
PayPal.
better. The PayPal. The build up felt better felt more appropriate. I'd like to see more of what Kenny and Jericho did in the KO Owens and Jericho WrestleMania match. But as I wanted to mention, as far as the build to the Jericho Omega match, one of the things that impressed me most is he was touring with Fozzy, and he's not living in Japan, and he could have very easily just done some video packages, Twitter, keep it all on Twitter. But he showed up. He went to Japan 2 times before the match. He went to attack Kenny Omega, and then he had the news conference where Kenny Omega got some of his heat back and attacked him. So props to Jericho for while touring with Fozzy, going to Japan a couple times and really letting this feud build more than just on video and on Twitter, which, by the way, they knocked out of the park on the Twitter thing too. They got everyone talking, and people were legit upset because they thought when it first started, they thought it was a legit Twitter feud. These two guys are brilliant. Their minds for the business are great, and it was. I hope we see more. I hope we see more of those two somehow, some way. It's good stuff.
I think one of the main themes of our show since we've started near the end of 2016 has been New Japan closing the gap, New Japan doing this, putting on great matches, all sorts of stuff, right? The Jericho thing now, he might be the most important wrestler to New Japan for what he's doing. You have an established guy who is, without a doubt, a WWE Hall of Famer. One of the best in-ring competitors ever. He's changed with the times. He is famous on other levels too, whether it be music, writing, podcasts. He's got he's got eggs in all sorts of different baskets. And what he can do and how important, I don't know if he realized like this, that it was when he signed up, I imagine he's like, yes, this is going to be great. Kenny Omega's maybe one of the 3 best wrestlers in the world right now, and it'll be a huge deal, especially with where New Japan is. Him being willing to stay there might be the most important thing for New Japan as a future competitor over the next few years to WWE. This is maybe one of the most important signings that they've ever had.
And also just speaking to the fact that New Japan has been closing the gap and they've been getting so much closer and closer and closer. It's going to be hard for not just WrestleMania, but any show, including WrestleMania. It's going to be hard to top Wrestle Kingdom from top to bottom. Like the matches, like even the matches that I didn't expect to be fully hooked into and to be invested in, like a hair versus hair match for the Never Openweight Championship with Hiroki Goto and Minoru Suzuki. I didn't really expect to be drawn in as much as I was. Or the heavyweight tag team title match with, who was that? I thought I had that in front of me here.
Evil and...
which is Evil and Sanda, which was the LIJ versus the Killer Elite Squad, Davey Boy Smith Jr. and Lance Archer. That match, that was one of my favorite matches of the entire night. That was great. The interactions that they had with the crowd, all of that was fantastic. This show from top to bottom might be one of my favorite pay-per-views, events, whatever you want to call it, that I've ever seen. It was fantastic, and that's just a testament to like you were saying, the fact that New Japan is closing that gap and are arguably at the top of the heap right now. It's after putting on that performance or that entire show, it's hard to say that they're not the best thing going right now in the world.
Now imagine this: how much bigger is it going to be at WrestleMania? Or excuse me, Wrestle Kingdom 13 when Bryan Danielson is on the card? Woo, mama!
There's a lot of good things can happen now over the next year that would make Wrestle Kingdom and New Japan even more important. They can just do things that WWE can't do. The in-ring product is so far and above what WWE has right now in New Japan that we get a lot of the same style matches on Raw week after week. And I mean, I know you just got the New Japan World streaming service. So you'll have more access to things and kind of get a better idea of how things are run. But we get a lot of the same old stuff on Raw. And sometimes there's segments that make things important, but ultimately where the in-ring product suffers, right? Like the entertainment factor and moments is still good, but they're not building it the way that New Japan does. And there's an article this week or last week, more stuff about Chris Jericho and Rolling Stone or Mark Cuban on Sports Illustrated about how they want to inch the gap closer, and he's got Access TV. And you've got JR and Josh Barnett who actually call it like a UFC fight. They're actually playing it like it's like the way you want to hear it. And I think that's important too, as opposed to a lot of the stuff that's trending or, keep talking about a segment that happened earlier in the show and looking forward to the main event. I mean, I can get pushing the main event a little bit, but I want more in-ring action stuff more than anything. I think that's what, you tune in to watch a match, not to hear about other stuff usually. So tell us the story. It should be like you should be helping the match, right? It's another. I think what makes a great match is commentary. Certainly helps, and it can be good or bad. I actually, now that for New Japan, there's you can get the Japanese commentary. You can get Josh Barnett and JR. They do the commentary for Access TV, whereas Kevin Kelly and
Don Callis
do the English New Japan. So it's weird how there's three but I don't know. I think that's fun that you can kind of get different commentaries that way too. I think WWE should, I don't know, maybe try another set of commentators that are just in-ring stuff. Or I also like what ESPN does with basketball and football games recently. They'll do on ESPN, it might be Rockets and Thunder, and you'll get your classic broadcast. But if you go to ESPN2, you can see a group of old coaches and players and analysts breaking down Russell Westbrook is the third best shooter when he takes 2 dribbles moving to his left, or just wild statistics and stuff like that you're more like your wrestling internet nerd, I think, would enjoy stuff like that. Like he's 5-2 this month. He's undefeated when he fights on Raw, or I don't know, in singles matches. I like little stuff like that bring it into more real sports. I would like to see WWE still be as entertaining as they are with out of ring segments, but I think there'd be more fun stuff that they could do to make it seem like a more real product.
Yeah, I agree. But to be fair to WWE, they don't have the luxury of ESPN. ESPN is ESPN, so they own their cable company, so they can put 2 games on at the same time, whereas WWE, they can't tell USA, hey, put on...
Well, you got the network as a possible...
Yeah, but with their contract
simulcast
with USA, they can't play it live, unfortunately. And then to be fair to WWE, as far as their product goes, as much as, even though New Japan's in-ring product is better than WWE has a specific audience, and it's a different audience than New Japan. So they do, to be fair to WWE, even though we as the hardcore fans may not like it as much, they're playing to their audience that's getting them money. So I can't knock it too much, but I can knock it from the fact that I don't like it as much, and the in-ring product does suffer, and they are held back. But to be fair to those guys on the WWE roster, the talent on the roster is just as good as the talent on New Japan. Just New Japan has more freedom in the ring as opposed to WWE. At least that's from the peanut gallery, the layman's eyes looking at both products. But no, I agree with you that New Japan is definitely closing the gap. And if you're a hardcore wrestling fan, if you like it for the wrestling, the in-ring product, like we do, and I like WWE too. We talk
about WWE all the time, and there's a reason I still put in.
Mm-hmm.
I watched 6 hours of WWE wrestling at least, in addition to whatever else I put in on the network. But just between Raw, SmackDown, and NXT, that's 6 hours of my week right there that I'm typically going to use to watch wrestling at least.
And I don't think it's a bad thing that we have different options of different styles as fans to watch, because you guys know that I watch a lot of Defiant too, and I like having different styles that I can go to. If I want to see a certain kind of wrestling, I can watch New Japan. Now I can, because I actually have the New Japan World, but I can watch Defiant if I want to see this, or New Japan if I want to see that, WWE if I want to see this. So I think it's great for wrestling fans that we have these options. And of course, I'm still going to hate on WWE when they do things that I don't agree with. I'm going to hate on the way that they're pushing Roman Reigns, and the way that we'll have this show, and we'll be 20 years down the line, and we'll be talking about how Roman Reigns is main eventing his 19th straight WrestleMania. But at the same time, I'm still going to watch it because it's still, there's a lot of ways to tell a story and different ways to entertain. And I wish WWE would adapt more of the New Japan style. But
will they have to? Will they have to at some point over the next couple of years? Because our group as fans, the internet marks or whatever you want to call us, the upper 20s to 30, like that male wrestling fan, that is a big part of. I mean, how many shirts have you guys bought over the last year? Or
I don't want to admit that out loud.
Okay, so but that's what I'm
Too
saying
many.
though. But we're also buying tickets. I think over the last year we went to a combined 5 to 7 different shows, and one where we all went to. I mean, there's a lot going on. We plus the money we put into the network too. So I think at some point WWE is going to have to change things up as New Japan gets closer and closer. And I think that's why fans want New Japan. It's not like they want New Japan to take over and WWE to collapse. New Japan pushing WWE as competition is great for WWE. And I think that if they will upgrade a little bit some of the way they do their matches and maybe give longer pay-per-view matches, I think that's great for WWE. I think that brings our group of fans back in while still not knocking or turning their back, I guess, on the children fans or your very old WWE fans.
Go ahead. You go ahead.
I'm just saying, if we want that to happen, we have to tune in to the mixed match challenge, because that, from what I hear, is really them trying to see what a platform like Facebook would allow them to do. And if that's successful and they can do more shows over Facebook, I think that would give them more freedom to do. I could be completely wrong. This is just completely speculative that just popped into my head now. But I think if that succeeds and they're able to do more things on Facebook Live, that'll give them freedom to do things that they can't on cable TV with their sponsors and with the ad revenue and all that kind of stuff that kind of holds them back as far as PG and things like that. Not that the PG, changing it from PG to not PG is just going to be the end-all, be-all fix, but yeah, I think they do have to do something, whether it's get more like New Japan or just change with the times. They have to do something, but I didn't mean to interrupt, Chandler, so I'll let you.
Oh, you're totally fine. Well, I was going to say that I feel like especially what Frony was saying, trying to find that middle ground where you can have it more of the New Japan, maybe independent style, and still appease the younger and older fans. I don't know that the older fans would feel that, be okay with that, just because so many older fans, and especially wrestlers, are set in their traditional ways. And not that they're wrong, not that anything was bad with how things were done back then, but as you said, you have to change with the times. You absolutely have to. And if you want to stay on top and stay in front of your competitors, you need to be doing at least just as good. Obviously, you need to be doing better than what they're doing. But I feel that at some point they will have to adapt to the kinds of things that New Japan is doing. They have kind of somewhat adapted to what's going on in the independent circuit, especially with NXT being what it is right now, and how their style of matches definitely feels more like watching a Ring of Honor or a Lucha Underground or some other kind of independent show. That doesn't really translate all that much on Raw or SmackDown on the main roster, but you can definitely feel the influence especially over this past handful of years, with the talent that they have taken from the independent scene.
Your NXT and Cruiserweight Classic and stuff like that totally speaks to what you're saying.
That feels like watching an independent show, whereas still, watching Raw and SmackDown still, it kind of feels like watching Raw and SmackDown, but at the same time, they have kind of somewhat adapted to that. And if you got to keep your finger on the pulse, and right now New Japan it's the biggest, hottest thing going, and you need to keep up and adapt and make sure that you're doing what's relevant.
I think change is coming. I think change is already happening, because if you'd have told me 5-10 years ago that guys like Shinsuke, Kevin Owens, AJ Styles, those kind of guys would be main eventers, would be competing for top titles, Bobby Roode, etc., guys that the internet fans
Samoa Joe, the list goes on.
Those guys, if you'd have told me that AJ Styles would be a 2-time WWE champion and he'd be holding the title going into a WrestleMania season, I would have thought you were foolish. But I mean, so they're changing, and I'm looking forward to see what they're doing in the future. I think they're going to continue to grow and change, and hopefully it's for the better.
Well, there's still a lot to get to, and we'll be back next week talking quite a bit more about New Japan and of course Wrestle Kingdom 12. And I imagine that's going to be talked about all year because some of the amazing displays of athleticism in pro wrestling was just spectacular, and it's something that we're not going to get away from. Next week, though, we're going to do our best. We're not going to do our best. We are going to do the best of 2017 show finally. So expect that next week right here on 103.5 to FM WLSP LP Sun Prairie, Wisconsin. Let's talk about some things right now in WWE going on. So I have a prediction for the Royal Rumble. I think that it is going to be Shinsuke. I think he's going to face AJ Styles at WrestleMania. I think WWE is going to get this one right. And as another little side nugget, I think that WWE is putting in the seeds for Cena versus Samoa Joe at WrestleMania, which I think is another internet fans' dream going back to the early to mid 2000s, which is going to be pretty awesome. What do you guys think are the probability of either of those happening? And are those two matches that you guys want to see? Obviously, everyone wants to see Shinsuke and AJ, I think, at Mania. And for the title, I think that's great. Put Kevin Owens in somewhere else. He's still that top heel from SmackDown. But I think you go face on face with AJ and Shinsuke. I know it will split the crowd in some ways, but I think more than anything, it's just what people want to see. Like we saw at Money in the Bank back in June when those two we got about 30 seconds of those two. And that was the moment of the pay-per-view. But Cena versus Joe is another one, too, that I think is maybe flying under the radar a bit. But I think that Samoa Joe is going to be John Cena's opponent here in a few months at WrestleMania.
Well, I would really, really hope to see that, to see Samoa Joe and John Cena. Unfortunately, Joe did get injured this past week on Raw. He is out for the Royal Rumble. And his injury, it was his foot. I can't remember exactly what the injury was, but
probably
it was
arch.
Yeah,
arch and
something like that. But they said it was an injury that it could take It could take 2 weeks or 2 months for it to heal. So things are way up in the air with Samoa Joe, and it's so unfortunate. The road to WrestleMania to coin the term to steal the term from WWE. It's beginning now. It starts with the Royal Rumble, and it's unfortunate for Joe to get injured right here, right now. So it would be, I don't know if it would be a stretch to say that would be a thing, but I would definitely, if it were to happen, I would be 100% on board with it. And obviously, as you said, with AJ and Shinsuke, that is the dream. They need to capitalize on the moment that you mentioned earlier about, or the moment at Money in the Bank that they had. They need to capitalize on that, because that was not only the highlight of that match, that was the highlight of the entire night. And for them not to take advantage of that right here, right now, they're both on the same show. You can have them fight for the title. It needs to happen.
I think AJ versus Shinsuke should happen and needs to happen. I unfortunately think they kind of dropped the ball on Shinsuke on the lead up. I think he should have been U.S. champion for at least a period of time, because that would have helped in his build to win the Rumble. But at the same time, it doesn't matter, because if you tell the right story at the Royal Rumble with him through the duration of the match, it'll work, and him and AJ in the ring will be great. As far as Joe and Cena, if Joe can't go, depending on what happens at Raw 25, I think we'll have a better idea then, but maybe it'll be Cena and Taker. I have a feeling Taker's going to come back, as much as I don't think he should. I mean, it looks like it, especially based on his Twitter. He sounds like he's ready to come back. So yeah, we'll see. But yeah, Cena versus Joe would be great. I'd love to see Cena put Joe over, and I hope that Joe can come back for the Rumble, because he's kind of had some bad luck with injuries since his main roster debut.
Yeah, we can only hope that is the case, that Joe is all ready to go for WrestleMania. Even if they hold him out until then and that is his next match, I think that's fine. But I really would love to see him versus John Cena. I think that's a great match that could go on any part of the card, and it really is a culmination of a dream match, really, from the last maybe 15 years. So WWE would be hopefully in a great situation to put that on if they are able to. I hope that they are, and I think that's a winner, man. It doesn't have to go on last. That could be your first match, actually. And man, Joe and Cena, though, those I'm gushing. I'm already getting goosebumps. But Shinsuke AJ to me is the end all be all. That is the best possible match, almost that WWE could put on with their current roster of people who are eligible and healthy right now. It really doesn't get much better than AJ and Nakamura. Okay, last thing of the day. I know you watched it. Chandler didn't get a chance yet, but Enzo Amore and Corey Graves, man, holy cow, this is brutal. I watching it, I really didn't know if it was kayfabe or not.
Straight to the source, right?
Straight to the source. This was unbelievable. I know that these two don't like each other. They are some of the original NXT guys, or close to being, in that first iteration, once it was formerly Florida Championship Wrestling. But I don't know if Enzo was playing his character too much or not at all. And Graves, I think, was playing it straight like he is supposed to. I think he was being himself for the most part. Is Enzo Amore everything that we hear from him backstage about being a jerk? I mean, he didn't really deny the getting kicked off the bus or being thrown out of the locker room. He spun it. He spun it his way. But that's what he's done from TMZ to Twitter to wherever, at WWE even, on camera.
If what we saw on Straight to the Source, which I hope it's not the case because the cameras were on and he's a smart performer, but if what we saw on Straight to the Source is how Enzo really is in real life, then he is kind of an a-hole. And Corey Graves looked really upset. Not upset. He looked really... It looked like it hurt him, the things that Enzo said. And I don't blame him because he took some low blows. And Corey even said that was a low blow. And I will give Enzo props because his response to that, when Corey was like, that's a low blow, he's like, that's how I won my first title, baby.
Come talk to me. Come talk to me.
So to be fair to him, his character is great. But if his character is really who he is, then he's not a very pleasant person to be around. But I'm a fan of Enzo. I'm still a fan of him. I'm going to hold out hope that he was just playing up for the camera because the cameras are on and you can't always believe the dirt sheet stuff. But who knows? It makes for interesting, compelling, as Eric Bischoff would say, controversy creates cash.
There you go. All right, folks. You can check us out on social media.
Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Search at the Schmozcast.
And check us out later today. We might even have a stream of this very show and maybe even last week's as well. So stay tuned. We'll get in our social media stuff and give you more information about what's going on. Until next time, for Chandler and Andre, I'm Anthony signing out.
This is singer-songwriter Jay Mathis, and you're listening to 103.5 FM, WLSP LP, Sun Prairie, Wisconsin.
Oh, boy!